I really want to do just a super long spoiler review, but I decided to do a separate, shorter, non-spoiler review, especially because I know there's a lot of people out there across the Atlantic Ocean who will not be getting this film for another month. So really sorry about that because, you know, I've been waiting this forever. But I guess, hey, 14 years you've waited, what's another month? Maybe, if you want to look at it that way. Full disclosure, I guess, The Incredibles is far and away my favorite Pixar film, so that's the direction I'm coming from, which I tried not to let my expectations get too high, and I tried to keep them, mitigated, but that's the perspective I'm coming from, so just kind of keep that in the back of your brain as I'm going through my spoiler-free review. Before I even get into the film, like all Pixar films, they start out with a short. Short before this one, you've probably heard a little bit of it by now, but oh my god, it was so wacky. And by the end, they kind of like reveal what's going on. They kind of hand it out to you in case you didn't get it, which is good because myself, and I could tell a lot of people in the theater just going through were kind of like, the heck is going on here? Plenty of moments of awkward laughter and just kind of strange silences going on. Honestly, at the end, I felt far more perplexed and almost a little grossed out than emotional about anything that happened. I think it was obviously well animated. I think it was a very creative way to tell the story they were telling in the opening short, but I don't know if it's a direction that I liked personally. But moving on to the film at hand, like some films are doing, at least in the theater I watched, they opened up with kind of one of those anti-piracy things, I think, where they're really thanking you for being in the theater. But one of the things they did throughout this thing of not just thanking you for waiting 14 years and showing up to this film, but they said, it's gonna be worth it. And they have, Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter, and Samuel Jackson coming out. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. I'm like, okay, you guys are setting yourself up here. I mean, the pedestal that especially myself and many other people hold the first Incredibles 2. So how does Incredibles 2 hold up? It's not as good as the first one. Okay, like, sorry, but like I my thoughts were similar about Solo. In as far as what I'm about to get into, not as far as Incredibles 2, I loved way more than Solo. Let's get that out of the way. But my thoughts were similar to Solo and Incredibles 2 in expectations and how we set them. Okay? So like I was saying, I love the first Incredibles. But going into this one, like, honestly, my expectations were, I was hoping for it to be as good as that. Mostly, I was just worried that it was going to be Cars 2, or more closely, like, Finding Dory, or Monsters University. And Finding Dory and Monsters University are fine films. I really dislike Cars 2, not just for what it is as a film, but really for kind of what it stands for and how it just sticks out like a sore thumb amongst all the other Pixar films. Even Cars. Cars 3 is a far better sequel to Cars 1 than Cars 2, but we're not talking about Cars. Back to Monsters University and Finding Dory, I think are very enjoyable films, but I don't really think they needed to exist. I didn't feel they added anything to those films' universes. And that's what I was worried this was going to be, that even after 14 years, this got pushed out just because, hey, we've got money sitting on the counter here, and we've had it sitting on the counter for 14 years. Let's do something with it. And while that still might have been how this happened, I certainly did not come out feeling like that. I felt that it far surpassed Finding Dory and Monsters University, and while maybe didn't quite match up to the near perfection that I believe the first film is, that doesn't mean I didn't think it was an amazing film. And I loved every second of it, and there were times where I was close to tearing up, not even necessarily because something emotional was happening in the film, just because I was so happy that I got to be in a theater and watch the sequel to Incredibles, and it was a film that I felt added a lot to the universe, and it was a film that at the end of the day I'm so glad it exists. And that's something that I can't say for Monsters University and Finding Dory, where I think those universes would have been just fine left alone, and maybe even a little better in some ways. So now let's actually get into why I thought what I did about the film, again without spoilers. Obviously the first thing, which makes perfect sense, is the animation was so much better. I really noticed it, especially in the fight scenes. I thought all the fight scenes, with the opening, there's a big set piece with the Underminer. I don't think that's really spoiling anything. They put some of that in the trailers, and obviously this film picks up directly after the first one. So, you gotta address the threat at hand, right? Underminer fight and the ones throughout the film were far more visually interesting than anything in the first film. The fire effects were great, and the hair was one of the biggest improvements as far as the character models themselves, which I guess we kind of have to attribute some of that to Brave, because Brave is what Pixar kind of used to be like, hey, we need to learn how to simulate hair in our films, and then they made Merida, and she had stuff going on. Not one of their best films, in my opinion, but hey, if that's part of their filmography that helped them get to Incredibles 2. So, gotta give it credit there. And then another thing that was really affected by the improvements in animation from the first film was the characters themselves, as far as physical damage and like mental distress in the way they are able to show that. You've probably seen it in the trailers, just Bob Parr just falling apart emotionally, and then the way they show it on his face. I really love that they were able to do that. Is something that especially they weren't able to do in the first film. There's, I think, a lot more humor in this one than there was in the first one. The first one had actually a lot of moments that kind of got a little dark for a kid's film. Still had plenty of humor as well, but this one far more focused on humor, and pretty much all of it hit for me. Can't really say too much more, but it was very funny, and just I think far funnier than the first one, just because that's where they decided to put the focus. And some of that becomes a factor of their focus on Jack Jack. Obviously, you've probably seen a ton of him in marketing, and I didn't think they put too much of him in the film. I was worried about that. You see that in a lot of Disney films. They put the cute animal sidekicks in the marketing a lot, and you never know, is it going to be in the film way too much, or not actually in the film all that much. Jack Jack, I thought, was in the film just the right amount, and he was great when he was there, but I never felt they were like, look, cute baby, you like it, it's cute. Personally, I never felt that attacked, which is good, because I was worried about that. They also used the raccoon in the marketing a lot. I felt like, especially like it even had a place on the poster. I was like, what's this raccoon doing here? Like, is this, why do we need a raccoon in The Incredibles? Thankfully, it was hardly in the film, and I just want to say that because personally that was a large concern of mine. So if that was a concern of any of yours, there's I addressed it. So yeah, hopefully it helped you out. Obviously one of the reasons I like the first film is not only was it a superhero film, which we didn't have a lot of back then, but it was a little more than that in the themes that it brought up. And one of those themes was family, and the family. Several themes about family are continued from the first film and brought up new ones here in this one. And just the family dynamic of the Parrs was on full display, and seeing them be able to fight together was really, really cool, just as it was in the first film. So I think they brought the family aspect to about the same level as they did in the first film. Now, getting to, I think, the two key things that really brought this just a little bit below the first film, which, again, I feel like I'm being negative, but it wasn't to that level to me, okay? Like, I have to say that, and I think in Incredibles 2 still being a film I love, every time you love something, I think you have to be able to critique it. The deeper themes, I don't think were there as much as in the first film. Like I said, there's a lot of focus on humor, and I think some of the deeper themes are sacrificed because of that. I think they do touch on some. I actually think they touch on a lot, but the problem is they choose, two of them, I think, to like really hammer home and just over the head with these themes, which was, it's a kid's film, again, kids, and I think this one actually targets kids a little bit more than the first one. They're going to hit you over the head with some things because they want to make sure that little kids who are watching this film are able to follow along. And so it did bother me a little bit, but it was never too bad outside of one or two like specific lines where they're just like, here's the theme. The problem was there was 2 or 3 other themes that I thought were very interesting, but they just kind of mention them and they never go anywhere. And I don't want to say like, hey, I'm complaining about them hitting me over the head with themes, and now that they're not, I'm saying they're not going into them enough. It's not, because when you're getting hit over the head with a theme, it's like they're sending you the message and they're literally telling you the message. I think you can explore a theme without specifically stating a line that tells the audience what the theme is, right? I can't really go into it more here. I'm going to go into a lot more in the spoiler section, but just know that while there are some deeper themes brought up, they're not explored to, at least in my opinion, as to the extent that they were in the first film. And the biggest difference between Incredibles and Incredibles 2 is the villain. Syndrome was a classic villain, mostly because of his personal connection to Bob / Mr. Incredible. This villain just didn't match up. I have a lot of reasons as to why it didn't match up to Syndrome for me, but of course, again, I have to save those for the spoilers, because I feel like even going into who the villain is a little bit is going to be... It's thin ice right there. So this has already been a pretty long review, which doesn't surprise me because this is a film I'm very passionate about. And even though I haven't put up a video in a while, there were a few films I had seen kind of as I went through finals at school and coming back home. But I decided to come back with this one because it's one that I have a lot to say about. So hopefully, even though this was long, you're able to stick through it and enjoy it. And, you know, let me know if you have any additional thoughts in the comments, or maybe save them for the spoilers video, which I should have up as well. So thank you for watching, and catch you on the flip side.